Nest. I'm here with my daughter, Katie, today, who's going to help me out with one of our favorite summer traditions. What is that?
Making jam.
Making jam. So we're going to start first by talking a little bit about the materials that you're going to need, and then we're going to go through the steps start to finish. I'm going to show you how to make it, how to put it in jars, how to put it away. But first we're going to talk about materials, and one of the most important materials is the fruit, and secondly the pectin. So we're going to use commercial pectin today, and I'm going to talk to you about your options. There's a lot to choose from, and the fruit as well. So first of all, we are going to make peach wineberry jam today. Wineberries are a wild berry that grow here in southeastern Pennsylvania. If you don't have wineberries, you should move to an area where they grow because they're fantastic. They do have seeds in them, so when you make jam out of just wineberries or just raspberries or blackberries, you get a lot of seeds. A lot of people press them, take the seeds out, and just use the juice to make jelly. But I love the flavor. I don't mind some seeds, but we also love the flavor of peaches. And this year, we happen to have peaches and wineberries at the same time. Not always the case. Sometimes in our area, peaches aren't available until much later in the season than wineberries. So it's okay to take your wineberries and put them in the freezer and save them for when your peaches are ready. So don't worry about timing. If you want to, just put your fruit aside. Jam is best with really ripe fruit. Damaged ones like this, perfect, because we want to use really ripe, and sometimes damaged fruit is the most ripe. So we're going to cut it up anyway, as I've already started doing here, and you don't have to worry too much about it being perfect. Unlike when you're canning whole peaches, you do want them to be pretty clean and perfect. Okay, I said that really ripe fruit is best for jam, and I meant it. These peaches are cutting so easily. I take a cut right down the center of them, and I give them a twist, and usually they pop right out. This is so ripe that as I twist, it's just falling apart on me. You can see the sugar separating in it. I want to go ahead and pull the skin off the outside of it, and you'll see it's not perfect fruit underneath because it has some bruising. It's super ripe, so my picking it up is making it squish, and that's fine because all we're trying to do is get these little pieces that I can chop up and I can throw in here, and they don't have to be perfect slices. The more mashed, the better. So I just did some hand washing because cutting up those peaches was a big mess. I've cut all the skins off. They're going outside the chickens. They'll be delighted with the treat that we're going to give them, and I have to throw the pits away. But those are ready. These peaches are ready, and the skins have been pulled away. I will put this together to make 8 cups in a minute, but we measure fruit for jam in mashed cups. We have to talk about mashing it. So this is a really good time to talk about equipment. You have 2 options when it comes to mashing. You can go old school. This is what I use. Or you can use an immersion blender. An immersion blender is a great tool. It's quick and easy to be able to put it down in there, and we call it the zhuzh in our household. We zhuzh that fruit. It's great, but you want to leave little bits of fruit. Jam is supposed to have bits of fruit in it, so if you zhuzh it too much and you end up with just a total puree, it's not as much fun. So use it carefully. All right, so I need my masher, and I'm going to be able to get down in here and start mashing some of this up. I still want bits of fruit, and when you start cooking it, the fruit softens and this becomes even easier. I'm just mashing it enough that I can measure out. You can see the volume went down when I started mashing, so I'm filling in those spaces. I'm just going to measure enough of these wineberries into here to equal 8 cups, and my family is sitting over there hoping that maybe there are still some left when I'm finished. So they get to eat them because I've been chasing them away from this bowl all day. Not looking good. All right, we're at 8 cups. So, next equipment that you're going to need, pots. We have to talk about pots first. You need a large pot to make jam. Well, you need 2 large pots to make jam, but you don't need specialty equipment. This is the pot that I'm going to cook it in. I've had this one for a long time. Has a good heavy bottom. You have to have a heavy bottom pot to make jam because the direct heat will make the sugars stick to the bottom. That's bad news. So the heaviest bottom pot you can find. I have a gas stove, makes it a little bit easier. Electric stoves can be difficult. Sometimes a diffuser is good underneath of your pot if you don't have a good heavy bottomed one. You need another large pot. It does not need to be this large. It just happens to be the one that I have. My pots are stored up here in our apartment kitchen, and I couldn't reach the other ones today, so I grabbed this one. And I already have my jars in here filled with water. I'm going to turn it on to get it up to the boiling that we need to sterilize our jars. and I have a canner rack in the bottom that my jars are sitting on. We talked about this in the sauerkraut video. Definitely need to make sure that your jars aren't sitting on the bottom, particularly if you have an electric stove, because that can cause your jars to crack. It's too hot, so you want to diffuse that a little bit. I think it's an essential piece of equipment that you have a jar lifter because of safety. It's so much easier when it's boiling hot to get in here and grab a hold of that jar with the jar lifter. So go ahead and get yourself one of those. We're going to need a set of tongs. This is primarily for when you have to pull lids and rings out of the hot water. A funnel is a huge help. This is something that needs to be sterilized as well. You need a ladle to dish your jam out and into your jars. So that works. You need something to stir your jam with. This one is stained, so you think maybe I've used it for jam a few times. This one's great. A spatula is good too, particularly if you have a really hot surface, because that'll keep it from sticking in the bottom. Your preference, whatever you're comfortable using. You need quilted jelly jars. They don't have to be quilted jelly jars. They can just be jars, but they need to be the size that fit a regular ball jar lid. I have my lids and rings in this pot because I'm going to add some water and heat them up to sterilize them, but we need to make sure that you have the right size. So this is regular mouth, and you can do full pint or half pint, your preference. Just don't make more jam per jar than you're going to eat in a few weeks. You don't want them to sit in the refrigerator too long once you open them. What else are we forgetting? Oh, you can, if you want to, use a candy thermometer. I just don't. I've made jam a lot of times, so I don't take the temperature of it anymore. But if you're concerned about it setting, a good way to check is to hang a candy thermometer on the side, and when you hit 220 degrees in your hot jam, then you'll know that you're at the temperature where it'll set back up. You're kind of making it candied. I don't have a candy thermometer because somebody broke that too, but I do have this thermometer that we use for meat on the grill, so I could check the temperature on this if I went to. I know what it looks like, and I'm going to show you how when we get to that stage. Some fruits are really high naturally in pectin. Blueberries is a good example. Apples have a lot of pectin. Cranberries have a lot of pectin. So those jams can be made without pectin, commercially made pectin if you want to, by cooking it. Things that are low in pectin are peaches, pears, and rhubarb. So those are things I love to make into jam. So we just add commercial pectin to make sure that we get the amount that we need. And pectin is actually just the fiber in the fruit that's naturally occurring, and it helps hold up the cell structure of the fruit. So that's what helps hold it together and make it come together as jam and set. So we're going to talk about a couple different commercial pectins. Here's a few that I set out today. There are so many on the market that you can purchase, and don't worry about finding the perfect one. Buy one and try it. Whatever your grocery store is selling is probably the easiest one to get. Anywhere canning supplies are sold is where you can find pectin. So my favorite is Pomona's pectin because I like to make low sugar jam. I really like to taste the fruit in it. So I make low sugar jam, and Pomona's has a recipe that allows you to go ahead and do low sugar. Shore gel is probably one of the most common that you'll see at the grocery store. They come in a small box, one pouch, makes one batch. It's really easy, but that is not a low sugar jam recipe. You have to use full sugar. I'm talking about equal amounts of fruit and sugar, and that's a lot. Shore gel also sells a product called Certo. This is a liquid pectin, and these packs, one pack makes a batch. Instructions are in here. You can follow along in the instructions. It's perfectly fine to use this. It's not my cup of tea, but it's fine. Also Ball, the maker of the ball jars that we use and the lids that we use, they make a pectin. This is a bulk version of basically what's in a box of Shore gel. I also have some Amish stores near me that sell bulk foods, and I can buy, this is probably 8 or 10 boxes worth of pectin, and I can buy it in one batch for a couple dollars. So this is a really good buy if you're making a lot of jam. And one other option is freezer jam pectin. So freezer jam allows you to make real low sugar jam and very low sugar or no sugar jam and freeze it. Some people love freezer jam because it doesn't have that cooked jam flavor. It tastes much more like fresh fruit. And Mrs. Wages makes one. This pouch you can use as well. We're not doing freezer jam today. We're doing traditional cooked jam. So we're going to go ahead and use the Pomona's that I'm accustomed to using. And it's usually readily available in the stores near me, but you can also buy it online. So I have the ingredients I need to make my jam set out. We have our peaches and our wine berries ready to go, all measured out. I have lemon juice because lemon juice is an acid that brings the pH down in the fruit when you make the jam, and that helps the whole system set, and that's the goal. Now remember, if your jam doesn't set, I'm going to warn you now, it's not bad. If we get loose jam and it doesn't set up, what do we do with it, Kate?
Eat it.
On ice cream. Makes ice cream topping. So if it doesn't set up, you can just tell people you did it on purpose and it was for ice cream topping. Perfectly acceptable. I have my calcium water already measured out for the recipe that we're making. The calcium water packet required, I have it measured out. It was 8 teaspoons that we're going to need. And for 8 cups of fruit, how many cups of sugar do we need, Catherine?
4.
4. Would you go get that for me?
Sure.
All right. Katie's going to go measure out some sugar.
Good video.
Look down inside of here. It's looking really delicious. I have my fruit down inside the pot. I'm going to continue to mash up my peaches. And now I'm going to add in this recipe, because I'm using the Pomona's pectin, it calls for a ½ cup of lemon juice. It calls for a ¼ cup for one recipe. Remember, I'm doubling. So we're going to put a ½ cup of lemon juice in here. All right, so we're at that stage where our fruit is at that full rolling boil that even when I stir, the boil doesn't stop. So it's time to go ahead and add in our sugar and our pectin mix. Katie, you want to bring that over?
Sure.
All right. We're just going to dump it in here all at once, and when we dump it in, go ahead, honey. I'll help you out. Dump, 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 dump. And you got it.
Get all of it?
Yep, we got it. Thank you. And we're going to dissolve that sugar back in. You can see it's not dissolved through yet. It's going to really cool things down immediately by putting the sugar in, the pectin in there. So we have to get it back to that full rolling boil one more time. And the kind of full rolling boil that I can't stop with a spoon. Take a few minutes to get it back up the temperature. Boy, it smells amazing in here right now. And when we get it back up to that full rolling boil, then we'll go 1 full minute of that rolling hard boil, and that'll give us enough time to have it set. All right, we're back at that full rolling boil. I can't stop that boil with my spoon, so it's time to set the timer for 1 full minute, and we stir a lot for that 1 full minute to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. So I keep going back and forth, figure eights all across the bottom, scraping, making sure that sugar doesn't stick. This is why having a heavy bottom pot really matters. You can see it's still boiling. It's actually spitting at me a little bit. Be really careful. Hot jam is painful, but it's delicious. And we're going to keep on stirring. I have 38 seconds left. This process is what's actually starting to candy that sugar and make it set up. And there's our minute. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off. Look at that. Delicious. All right, this is where organization and layout really matters. I've got my pot full of jars that are sterile and ready to go. I have my pot full of jam right here. I have my small pot with my rings and lids inside, and my lifter. I'm going to go ahead and set that in there so we're ready to go. And I need to get out my first jar. Katie, could I have my jar lifter, please? Can you bring that around?
Sure.
This is where having these specialty tools really does help. This is going to be a lifesaver when it comes to reaching down inside that pot to get the jars out. First, I'm going to use my tongs to get my funnel out, which is now sterile. And I'm going to use my jar lifter to pull out my first jar. Be very careful with this process. If you rush it, you do get burnt. Coming right over here next to my pot of jam. Put my funnel on top of it. My jam is starting to form a little bit of a candied jellied coating on top. That's when you know that it's setting up and it's working. And we're just going to take a spoonful at a time inside of this jar. You want to leave 1/4 inch of headspace at the top of the jar. And headspace is the 1/4 inch of space from the top of the jar down to the jelly itself. It's a good idea to have a paper towel at the ready. I use paper towel dipped in very hot water. This was just boiling, to wipe off the top of the jar. Sometimes you'll see a little jam collected because you spilled on it. You want that out of there. You need to have it nice and clean. These look pretty clean. I did a good job today. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my magnet lifter to lift my lids and rings out of their hot water to get these lids on. They're pretty hot, but it is manageable. Right back into the hot water. And we will process these when I have all the jars filled. All right, we've put all of our jam into our jars and back into the pot that has to come up to a boil, and it'll boil for 10 minutes at sea level. We're at sea level here in southeastern PA, so we'll do 10 minutes. You add 1 minute per 1,000 feet, so you'll have to adjust that time based on your altitude. And the rest of the jam that didn't fit into a jar, it wasn't enough to complete a jar, goes into a little bowl, which is my family's favorite bit of jam, because this sits on the counter with a spoon in it, and it's usually gone by morning. Thanks for joining me in jam making today. I hope that you learned a lot, and I hope that it encouraged you to go ahead and give it a try. This is not a very difficult process. Jam making takes more time to get the supplies together than it does to make jam. It's delicious, and you can control the ingredients and know where they came from and really enjoy it. These are going to come out of the canner and sit here on the counter. You'll start to hear lids popping, and when they pop, you know they're sealed. After they have finished popping and they sit and cool down overnight, I'm going to go ahead and remove those rings, and they can go downstairs and sit on the canning shelves. We'll label them for what they are, and we'll enjoy them sometime this winter or next year. Thanks for joining me.